Learning Perek Dal Halacha Gimel. A Pesach Yotzim Yerushalayim. The Pesach left the gates of Yerushalayim. You're only allowed to eat the korban Pesach in Yerushalayim. Oshenitma ba'Abba also. If it became Tomei on Abba also, you saw it miyad. You burn it right away. Let's go down to the Peirush. This is found in the Mishnah Machon 82a. Nitmu habaylim. If all of the owners became Tomei, and you can't eat it, or mesu, they all died, or moshku was shudeim, or they all left it. Afil nitmu or meis kodim zrigas adam, even if they became tomei or died before zrigas adam, manichan oisoin, you have to leave the korban ach ta'uba tzurosa. And it's different than the previous situation until, because it's not so visible that it became. It's not valid. When it leaves Yerushalayim, you know right away that there's something wrong with the korban, but you have to leave it overnight. And v'achar kach yisor. This is found in the Mishnah Machon 82a. As the Bailim became tomei or they died, you have to leave it overnight. Rashi explains that overnight means you see that it's no longer meat. But you can't burn it obviously on Yom Tov, because you don't burn kochim on Yom Tov, and what you don't burn it on the 14th, like a korban Pesach, which left Yerushalayim. Rashi explains that there's nothing wrong with the korban itself. There's an outside factor, and since you can't burn kochim b'dorech b'zoyin, people won't know about it, and therefore you only have to wait till it goes overnight. You can't do it on Yom Tov, so you do it the next day. The Rambam does not explain how long you wait. What's tuba tzurosi mean? Rashi, we says overnight, but he doesn't explain it not in Beis HaBchira, not in Hilchos Chametz. We've seen that the Rambam says it doesn't have to do with an actual time limitation. It has to do with the meat is recognized as not being able to be eaten. Zaklal, this is the rule the Rambam says. Kol pisuloi begufo yisor miyad. Any psul that is in the offering itself, you burn right away. So if it's an outside factor like dam, or the owners died or became tomei, you have to wait till it becomes invalid as meat. And then it should be burnt. The Mishnah Lamelech writes that this din is not only because Pesach, but all kochim. That the psul is in the gufam, it should be burnt right away. But the psul is because of blood, or that it went out of the city, it's nifsal. Levigo, therefore, if they slaughtered it after it was known that the Baalim removed themselves from it, there, if there it's you burn it right away, because the Mishnah explains that it's called a psul begufa because it's not a kosher korban. The Mari Korkis cites the source of this in the Mishnah, in Machon 71b, that if you slaughtered it and it was known that the Baalim removed themselves, or they died, or they became tomei, he's potter, because when he slaughtered it, he didn't know about it. And the Mishnah is talking about an Erev Pesach that happened on Shabbos. He's potter from Machatas, because when he had permission to slaughter it. The Gemara says, if it happened in a weekday, it should be burnt right away. So today's question is, why should it be burnt right away? We just said that if it's an outside factor, then you should have to wait until it becomes unusable as meat, and only then can you burn it. So today it says in the name of Rabbeinu Shmuel that when he slaughters the Pesach, when there's no owners, that's called a psul in the animal itself. If we look at the Lechem Mishnah says it should be burnt right away only if before they slaughtered the korban they didn't take off of it the name Pesach. Then it's considered a psul begufoi. But if, for example, they said it should be a shlomim, it's not called a psul begufoi because anybody can eat it. It's a psul because of bailim. It was slaughtered after the Tomei Shel Ben Abayim, and there's no din that has to be burned right away. You have to wait until the meat is not edible. The Rambam continues. When is this so? She is sorry from nitma abayim. It should be burnt if all the owners became tomei. Kishenitmu kol bnei achabura. If every single one of the members of the group became tomei. Alav nitmu miktzos, and if only a few became tomei zochu toirim bechelkom shel tmeim. Those that are Torah remain as in the portion of the tmeim. Aval pi. Even though she didn't that after they began to eat it, and each one received this portion, so technically the others shouldn't be able to take it. They can. They can take the portion of the others. If they began eating, and some of them became tamei, there it's different. The chelik of the tmeim should be burnt. The case of Mishnah cites in the Yerushalmi as the source, and the Marie Korkus explains: if all of them began to eat together, and then some of them became tamei, so everyone received his portion, and the others cannot be married, take away from get the portion that belonged to somebody else. But if the Tohirim began eating after the Tmeim became Tamei, they received everything. The Rae explains that a psul is not because of the portions, but because when they began to eat, the Tohirim wanted to eat, they don't think about the Pesach of their others. And therefore, the portion that the Tmeim can't eat was for a moment forgotten about, because the Torah didn't think about it. Because the Torah and Tmeim, everyone says, I'm going to eat my portion. But when they didn't start to eat yet, they're expecting to eat everything that's in front of them, and there's no Esach Hadas, there's no lack of concentration on the Korban. Same would apply if some of them died before they began to eat. Those who are alive automatically receive the portion of those who died. But if all of them began to eat and then some of them died, he burned the portion of the mesim. This again is a Tosefta Perek Zayin Halacha Gimel. Nidma Sholem Eruboy. If it became Tomei in its completeness or most of it, so Oisid of Ne'abiro V'nei HaKoil Kedei Levaishon Ad She'yisiru Boy. If all of it became Tomei, then you burn it in a place called Biro, we'll see, and this is in Psachim 81b, that you burn it in order to embarrass them. You should be careful, and you burn it with the wood of the marocha. If, however, only part of it became Tomei, or where there is leftover after they finish eating the Seder, so you burn in their courtyards or on their roofs from their own wood. Peirush HaMeir, the Rambam explains, you burn it b'fnei HaMikdash. And then he explains how Bira is in the Beis HaMikdash. And so we find in Masechta Poro, and the Yuma, and the Gemara and Zvochem. But there's a machlokes Reish Lakish and Rabbi Yochanan. What's the Biro? Reish Lakish is of the opinion Shemikdash Kulei Korei Biro, because it says L'nois HaBiro Asher Chinoisi, which is in Divrei Hayomim. Rabbi Yochanan is of the opinion Shebiro was a special place on Har HaBayis. The Achronim question. Rambam here says that Hamikdash is Korei Biro, and he would seem to be like Reish Lakish. In Ma'aseh HaKorbanos, he writes that there are three places to burn kodesh. One in the Azora, where you burn Psulei HaMikdash and Muri Kodshim, it became Posel. Second one is on Har HaBayis, the Temple Mount of Shmoi Biro. And there you burn Chatos, which have to be burnt when they have a Psul. Ashlishi, Mechutz L'Yerushalayim, which is based on Deshem, where you take out the power and soya of Yom Kippur to be burnt. And he writes, Biro is a Mokim Ba'abayis, is like Rabbi Yochanan. So they asked the question, Siach Yitzchak wants to answer it, and Reish Lakish also admits that there's a place in Har Habayis that's Bahar Habayis that's called Biro. But he's of the opinion that the Mishnah of Tomid, Biro means the Mikdash in general. Like in Masechet Tomid, Perek Aleph Mishnah Tes, he goes underneath, when he's Tomei, he goes underground under the Biro, and there it means the Mikdash. Therefore, even though Rambam passing the Reish Lakish, that the entire Beis HaMikdash is called Biro, still, in Hilchos Chametz U'Matzah, he writes, there's something else in Har Habayis that's called Biro. And the Siach Yitzchak cites that so answered Reb Chaim Alfandri. You can burn it with the wood of the Beis HaMikdash that's on the Mizbeach, because if we'll allow him to bring from his house, we're afraid that when he finishes burning, he'll take the wood back, and people will think he's stealing from the wood of the Beis HaMikdash. But once it's done with the Atzias Marocha, we don't have to be fearful that he'll take it back to his house. The figure of the Rambam says, if he wants to do it not with wood, which is eligible for the Mizbeach, but rather with straw or reeds, you can do so, because everybody knows they're not eligible for the fire on the Mizbeach, and they won't be choished that he stole from the Atzei Merocha. This we find at Machlokes HaMoraim in the Gemara Pesachim 82a. If he wants to burn in the Mikdash from the wood, you don't listen to them. So that, why don't you listen to them? Because other people don't have. It says because people think that he's stealing what's left over when he takes it home from the Atzei Merocha. The Gemara tells us the difference is regarding reeds or leaves of trees, date trees, that you can't use in the Merocha because they burn too quickly, and the fire of the Merocha does not last. Love it's mutter, you don't have to worry about it, that people will suspect him. Even straw is also, and the halacha is kirova because of shad. According to Rabbi Yosef, the reasoning is because we shouldn't embarrass somebody who doesn't have money for his own wood, especially pilgrims who came. They didn't have their own wood with them. Nidma miyutoy, if only a small portion of the meat became tamei, v'chein hanoyser, what's left over from the Leil Pesach, they are burnt in the courtyards from the person's own wood, but not from the wood of the Marocha. It shouldn't remain from the Yatzei Marocha, and they should be moil on it. The Gesher Mishnah cites Nidma Miyutoy V'anoisa. If a little bit of it became Tomei, the leftover, you burn it in the courtyards or on the roofs from their own wood. As the Mishnah says, why did the Rambam exclude the case of a guest? Because there the Gemara questions in the Brisa that somebody has Bostoner Pesach, they became Tomei, he burns it on the Biro from Atzei Merocha, and the Gemara answers that that's a special case of a guest who came to Yerushalayim from outside of Yerushalayim. He has no wood, therefore we permit him to use Atzei Merocha. So why didn't Rambam explain that? So the Yonder says, since in Psuli HaMikdoshim, Rambam mentions, if he's a guest that has no house, you can burn it in the Atzei Merocha. Therefore, he does not repeat it again over here. The Machon points out what it says: you burn it in the courtyards. And the Mishnah says either in the courtyard or the roofs. And the Rambam left out the roofs. And also in Psuli HaMikdoshim, he writes that what's left over from Kochim Kalam, you burn it in their homes. It doesn't mention not the courtyards, not the roofs. And it seems that the Mishnah does not mean courtyard or roof specifically. Furthermore, he questions, the Malachim Shlomo asks in the name of the Chacham, Eliezer Archo, how can you burn on the roofs as a Pesach? Psuli HaKochim, after being burned in a place where they can be eaten. And we learn, as we learned from Sochem, a Kodesh Baish Tisoref. Rashi explains that both the Kochim Kalim, they have to eat in the Yerushalayim, has to be within the city. And since Korban Pesach cannot be eaten on the roof, and the Gemara, as the Gemara says in Sochem 85b, Amarav Gagim Aliyus Leniskachu, that the roofs were not Kodesh like Yerushalayim, how can you burn it there? And he remains with a question. Furthermore, the Achronim ask a question: why does he leave out what's mentioned in the Mishnah in Sochem 81b, that Hakamtzonim, as it were cheap and didn't want to spend money on their own wood, would burn it before the biur from the wood of the Beis Hamikdash, even if only a part of it became Tomei. The Sefer Choik Noson explains that he relied on what the Nevoreach. If he's an Ereach, he doesn't have a house, he can burn it there. The Gemara will learn that Achsanoi is learned from the din of Kamtzonim, that just Achsanoi guest really doesn't have. And they're just like these miserly people who we permit them to use from outside Marocha. And therefore, when he mentions Achsanoi, it's as if he mentioned the misers as well. The Aruch LaNer questions, how were they permitted to burn Boso that was Nidmo from the Atzei HaMarocha for Avodas HaKodesh? In the Gemara it says also to burn, destroying anything which has to do with Hegdish, because it says Zoisasukein Hashem Lekechem. And Achsam Soiver in his Chuvas explains it's only if you do it to destruction. But to burn the Noiso is not Ashchosa, it's part of the mitzvah of the Korban.